some background information on you. Have you lived in Baltimore most of your life?
I've lived in Baltimore now for 59 years. Um, I came from Richmond, Virginia. When I was 12 years old, I moved to, actually, I came to Fort Meade first because I had, because of a situation that happened to me, I got raped and I got pregnant. And so my father married me, uh, my first husband. He married me off to my first husband. And back then, you didn't have babies and don't have a husband. That was a rule, especially in the black community. But my father was also a black minister. So I was 12, and I first came to Fort Meade because that's where my first husband was stationed at the time. Then my aunt helped me secure an apartment in Baltimore City. So my oldest child is 58 years old, and I'm
Wow.
71.
Wow.
hmm
And what was your experience like growing up in Baltimore?
Well, like I said, I'd come from Richmond, Virginia, which was a very racist place already. So it didn't shock me that I couldn't go places. I couldn't ride on the front of the bus. You couldn't go downtown in Baltimore at all and buy anything. I mean, you could buy it, but you had to stand on it outside. You couldn't sit down and eat at the lunch counters. Um, you mainly poor people and black people in West Baltimore shopped on Lexington Street, West Lexington, the bottom part of Lexington Street in Pennsylvania Avenue. The black people in East Baltimore dealt with Grave Street, which had markets had the market in the store. So that's basically, we didn't, and the black people that ventured off to South Baltimore or northeast or somewhere like that, they came back to those areas to shop because that was the only place we could shop and get food. We couldn't. When I got here, I wasn't in school um, because I was a mother. I was a wife. And there were segregated schools still. Um, 2 years later, my brothers and sisters came. Some of my sisters were already here, and brothers, they were older and they lived here. But my father moved the whole entire family here, so some of my brothers went to school where I wanted to go to school, but they said no, I couldn't go because I'd had a baby, and they didn't let girls go back to school that had babies at that time. So I was stuck with basically a sixth grade education, which was on a fourth grade level. Um, and it was hard for me, but I was blessed. I had a very, even though my father, married me out, I explained to people, I understand why, because he had a lot of pride. And that was one of the things in our community we really stuck close to was marriage and the family and stuff like that. So I understood why my father had married me off to this man. Um, he was 22 and he was his assistant pastor's son. And my father felt because the man had a lot of respect for him that he would be kind and treat me fairly. So he was getting the best he thought he was getting the best he could for me. Uh, the fact that I was a dyslexic person at that time and nobody knew what dyslexia was.
Hmm.
It was hard for the teachers even when I was in school to try to teach me. Um, but my brother, I had a brother, James Chambers we all Chambers. And my brother James was in the movement. And he was in the civil rights movement. He was a Muslim and he worked closely with Minister Malcolm X. And he became his lieutenant. And my brother came home and he would talk about all the things that was going on in the demonstrations. And I asked my brother one time, please let me go with you. I want to go to the demonstration. And that demonstration was in 1960. And my brother said to me, no, by that time I had um, my first child I had in 1955, and then 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. And so I was pregnant at the time, and my brother said, I'll ask Daddy to let me carry you so you can just see. I don't want you to get in the demonstration. I just want you to see it. It was in North Carolina. And he said, but I just want you to be able to see it. And so I said, okay. So I had my baby, and I got to go to the demonstration. But when my brother looked up, I was in the demonstration. I was in the heart of the demonstration, in the front of the demonstration, and it shocked him. Um, but it was what I knew. It was something like pulling me at that time, said, this is what you're supposed to do. And so my brother gave orders to his um, soldiers to pull me out. But every time they would pull me out, I would go back. And um, his thing was, he didn't want them to hurt me. So I would fight them to get back into the demonstration. So his thing was just protect her, please protect her. Because I'm the youngest girl in the family, and my daddy would have had a heart attack if he'd have came, if he'd come back and told him your daughter got killed or your daughter got hurt. Because that was a shocking demonstration for me. Because let me tell you, we were demonstrating, and all of a sudden the police went away. It was like we was in a little town. All these sheriff deputies went away. About 20 minutes later, all these men came back, dressed in white, shooting, literally shooting us down. One of my brother's best friends got killed protecting me. I got shot here in my shoulder, my left shoulder. By him grabbing me and holding me down, they just shot him in his head, and the bullet came through to my shoulder. Right then and there, I knew that was, I had to fight. I had a anger in me always, and the movement helped me calm that anger. The man that raped me was white, and I couldn't tell my father, because my father would have revenged it. And you know what would have happened to my father. My father had me and 3 other young children at home at the time. My father was the father of 57 children, 58 of us, but 57 of us was living at that time. My father would have been killed. My uncles would have been killed because my father was the oldest brother, and one thing they did was protect the women of their family. But because we had a farm, and on the farm was this great big old tree, I guess it was there before I was born, because the tree was really huge and large. And I had never seen a real doll. My mother used to make dolls for me because I was the last girl. And we didn't have a lot of money. We were poor people. My father was a poor Baptist minister. But my father came back from off of one of his trips and brought back a real doll. A doll that was made in the store, made. He brought this doll, and it was the most beautiful thing to me, because she had real pretty long black hair, and she was a black doll, but she had pretty long straight hair, and she stood about that tall. And so I used to play with that doll under the tree and talk. to, just make believe. I didn't have any sisters around. My sisters had grown up or gotten married, because it was a thing that if you got 16 or 17, you were married. My daddy was my husband. That was just the thing. But they had their own, gone and got their own family. So all I had was brothers. And so the dog was like a comfort to me. And when this man came upon me, all I remember is looking up, seeing him standing over me. And he must have hit me, knocked me out, I don't know what. But when I woke up, my clothes were all torn and I was bloody. And I went down, it was a creek about maybe a quarter of a mile from our house, and I tried to wash the blood off of me. I tried to wash the blood away, but the blood kept coming and kept coming. And I didn't want to tell my mother, and I didn't want to tell my father or my family that, because we were taught that you don't have sex and stuff like that. That's for people that's married. And so I didn't tell them, but my father had me, because of my dyslexia, in a Catholic school. And I guess about 3 months later I was taking gym, and I never was good at it, so I fell. And so the nuns carried me in the office to, help me, because I couldn't hardly breathe and stuff. And they carried me into the nurse's office, but when they removed it, they seen that I was pregnant. So the nuns talked to me and asked me about it. And they asked me, how did I get pregnant? What man, who had did this to me? And I didn't tell them. So my aunt worked in the school, my father's sister, and they sent for her and asked her to come in and talk to me. And so my aunt talked to me, and I loved my aunt Daisy. She's gone, but I loved her. She was so kind to always. She was the mother that I looked up to, really. She was my aunt, but I looked up to her like a mother. And so I told her what had happened to me. And so she told the nuns that she would take care of it. And she carried me home to my mother. And she told my mother. And the first thing my mother and my aunts, she called, I had 3 other aunts. My daddy had 3 other sisters. My mother didn't have any sisters. She just had brothers. They got together and they talked to me and told me I could never tell my daddy. I had never lied to my daddy. I have lied in my lifetime, but never to my daddy. They said you can't tell your daddy, because if you tell your daddy, then he's going to kill him. They had a farm like maybe a mile from ours, right? Then they were, they were pretty well off. Back then, I would have said they were well off. Anyway, they had a nice big farm, and they had pigs and chickens and, all the things you have on a farm. So, we never told my father, I never told my father who my child's father was. But my aunt went to his family. She went to his family and she told them what he did to me. And they immediately sent him away. They sent him to college. They sent him away. He went to college. And when my father found out I was pregnant, I was like 6.5 months pregnant. And he asked me, but I didn't tell him. I just cried all the time. So I guess by me being the youngest girl, I got special favors from my daddy, because he would, if I started crying, he would just hold me and tell me, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, and it's okay, you don't have to talk about it. And that's the way I got through a whole lifetime, because when my father died, I had grandchildren, but I got through a whole lifetime of never telling my father who this baby's daddy was, but his family knew. His family knew who her father was. But my father got me married, and I was here. And they so when people, that was the anger in me, that I hated white people And I didn't, because there were people that were kind to me, but I just, because of what had happened to me, I just, no, I don't want to talk to my, and I became a nationalist, a black nationalist. And it just stayed with me and stayed with me on, while I was even here. Um, and I came, I joined the Black Panther Party. And talking one day to one of my friends in the Black Panther Party, she said, Annie, you have a real anger in you, that it was always my thing is, if I die, I want to kill somebody white first. And she said, Annie, I don't want you to be that way, because that's not really, you always go out your way for everybody, but then you have this anger. So I had grew up as a child. Every now and then there was another family that was kin to the family of the young man that raped me, the man that raped me. And they had a set of twins. And one of the twins became a nun. And as my friend was talking to me, she was telling me about this good nun she knew, who, had supported the party and do things in the party, right? And I said, yeah, but you gotta watch it, you gotta watch it. But she introduced me to this nun. This nun was a friend. She was a friend that I had played with when I was a little girl, Irene. And we knew each other, we remembered. And I could not find evilness in Irene. My mother was a Catholic, or she was an ex-nun. My father was a Baptist minister. So I began to go to the Catholic Church for selfish reasons, really. You can get away with a lot of stuff in the Catholic Church. You can't get away with it in the Baptist Church, right? So my thing was, yeah, I went to church. I tell my daddy, yes, sir, I'm going to church. But I'd go to the Catholic Church, take a little drink, do a little shaking it up, and all that kind of stuff in the Catholic Church. We could do that. So that was my thing. But the priest that had Christian me was odd. That was odd to me, because I met him again, Father Witchland at St. James and St. John, who was a white priest. And this man supported me. No matter what I got into, this man supported me. But still, in somewhere in my mind, I was always distrustful, until me and Irene sat down and talked one day. And we talked about when we were kids and everything. And the person that attacked me was her cousin. I told her. And she said, I always looked at my oldest daughter and wondered why she looked so much like my grandmother. Because she looked just like her grandmother. And the thing about it, God never let him have another child. The only child he got is that one child out of rape, who is now 58 years old. That's the only child he ever got in lifetime. So when his mother was very ill, Irene had told her about my daughter. She asked if my daughter could come see her. She wanted to see her. And I said no, but my aunt said, please let her see this child. Because, back then, women didn't make a whole lot of decisions anyway. It was her husband's decision that he would send her away, his son away, right? So she got to see her granddaughter, her first grandchild, and the only child her son ever had. When he died as a judge on the Supreme Court of Virginia, he had no more children. But see, God has a way of doing things. And the more I got into the Bible, and the more I read, I understand what made me strong and what kept me to fight, what kept me, and the love that people poured out to me. The way I got an education was I became president of an organization called National Welfare Rights, and I was president here in Baltimore. A Jewish professor, Stan Whitaker, helped me get an education. Started at CCB and ended up at the University of Maryland with a master's degree. And all along the way, it was people that was white that helped me get there. Um, Dr. Bruce Purry, Assistant Dean, University of Maryland. Merlin Purry was his wife, but she was head of all the libraries here. She helped me study every night, helped me go all the way, you know. Dr. Michael Brand was a professor at the University of Maryland. And even when I would tell him off, he would say, that's all right. I understand where you're coming from. He was a Jewish professor, but he helped me get through. When I came out of the University of Maryland, I had a master's degree and I was on the dean's list. See, so that's my background. And that's what kept me going. And that's what, even before I became a minister, I knew that there was work for me to do. And that through all those hardships, I'm the mother of 25 children. I had 12 sons, 13 daughters. But through all of that, and through the bad marriage that I had, was, well, part, you know, sometimes I tell my children, well, I talk to them now about it. When they were small, I wouldn't talk to them about their father. But I talk to them now and said, you know, I never really angry with your father, because I don't think it was his choice to marry me either. I think it was the two men that got together and said, this is my daughter, and you know, she needs a husband. And I think my father-in-law, my first father-in-law, because he always was good to me, said, I want, you know, let her marry my oldest son, because his son, you know, was kind of wild. I guess he thought maybe he'd get married, get a wife and children that'll settle him down. But those were the things that, you know, through all of that, I sit here today thankful and happy. And even through the rape, my daughter is one of the best people in the world. She's a wonderful woman. She's a grandmother and a great-grandmother. And I'm blessed to have her. She do everything she can to help me. Her children, she's the mother of, what, 3 daughters. She have 3 girls. And she's my daughter that lost 2 of her grandsons. One of my grandsons was one of her grandsons. He's my great-grandson. Wasn't into gangs, wasn't into anything but trying to get through school, be an architecture, had won a scholarship from Johns Hopkins. And the reason I say the police department killed him, because just like we said here, right across the street is parole and probation. Police cars lined up, policemen in their cars, and my grandson get killed, right, like if he was standing right there at that building. That's where his brains got blown out of his head. And they said, we didn't see it. But they had told his other brother had been in a gang called YGF. You know, the young children, I call them the young goofy fools. They laugh at me. I say, yeah, I know what it stands for, young goofy fools. Y'all ain't even got good sense. But anyway, he was in the YGF. And because he became a father of a, you know, son and a daughter, he said, I have to, you know, make a change. We kept telling him, you can't do this. And so he was making a change in his life, and because he got out of the gang, um, and he was working with the fellow police, the feds, because the police department had them selling drugs. Policemen, I don't know whether the department, so I'll subtract that, but I knew policemen had those young boys out there dealing drugs from one side of town to the other. And they had told him they was going to get him. But they killed the wrong brother because they looked alike. So one of my grandsons is dead because he looked like the other one. Hey, Bert, how you doing?
You going to church?
No.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, baby. I'm sorry. That's one of my godchildren. Um, because the police department, the policemen, all of Northeast District, if not all of them, then a great deal of them were into the drug trade. And that's why I stand up and say it openly. Because I have proof. I have proof that my grandson gave me up until this day. They killed Vic because he looked like Don. They thought they had killed Don. When they came, they found out they did not kill Don. They had killed the wrong brother. They kept coming to my daughter's house, and they kept raiding her house. And because my daughter lived right up the street from me, then they started coming to, and I had another daughter live on that block. They kept coming to her house. And it was a harassment thing. So then they finally started coming to my house. And they knew they would never find no drugs or nothing in my house. First they said they'd find some guns. Then they said that, that they came in looking for drugs. They know they'd never find nothing. But because I continued to fight with some students from another college, and we, photographed the police doing things, and we turned it over to the public defender's office, and they knew other things that I worked with young people in the prison and everything else. They continued to come to my house and continue to harass me. They even tried to get me put out of public housing because the house I was living in before was public housing. I had lived in that community for almost 40 years. Worked hard in that community and helped young people and helped people in the community. Everybody in the community knew it and said it. But they felt that they could harass me enough to get away. But it didn't bother me that they came to my house because I knew they weren't going to ever find anything. So the last time they came to my house, they said they found drugs in my house. And I said enough is enough because I know you didn't find anything in my house. I know what's in my house. My daughter was there, her daughter, two of my grandchildren, and my daughter's children's father was there, which I was talking to them about why they should get together, get married, and raise their children. That's who was in my house when they came. We were all sitting like we're sitting now. They broke in, they had the guns, they had all kinds of stuff. They searched my house and they stole jewelry. They stole my rent money. They stole pictures, because when I go to the prison to minister to the young people and to prisons period, they sometimes we take pictures, sometimes I get letters from people that's in. They stole all of that. They stole all of that. Besides that, I had a briefcase that had some material in it with evidence on Baltimore City Housing Authority, where they had gotten in bed with some developers and contractors in this city, and I had the proof. So they thought they had it all, but they had taken taken the briefcase, and all those things were things that they stole out of my house. They stole my first wedding ring, which was my mother's ring. Was my mother's wedding ring. that my father gave her. And my mother and father um, got married, what was it, 19, oh God, I think they said 1918. So you can imagine what kind of gold you got back then, you know, and it was gold and diamond and ruby. And my mother never gave it to none of my sisters or anybody. When my father took it off her finger when she died, then he wanted it on my hand. And I had taken it off, put it up, 24 karat gold, which you don't even get now in the first place. But they stole that ring. That's the only thing they took that really, really hurt me, that I know I'm never going to get back. Because, my birthstone rings, my wedding rings, and all that, they could, I can get those things. It don't matter. But my mother's ring, I know I'll never get back. The police, they continue to harass my children, my grandchildren, and other people in the community. As a matter of fact, they arrested all the young people in the community because somewhere along the line, they got the idea that they were all my grandchildren. I don't know why. I do have 180 grandchildren and 82 great-grandchildren and 26 great-great-grandchildren, okay? But it was, I guess they said, yeah, they are. But they would harass all the children in the community. And it was comical to me that they would do that kind of a thing. It was, to me, yeah, tell your grandmother I did it. And the children, some little, you don't know my grandmother. But they would say, tell your grandmother. But that was the thing that they did, that they thought that they could really hurt me with. Not one person sitting there the night of the hearing don't really know who I am. But the reason I wanted them to know where I was, because I want them to know I am never going to be scared of you. And I'm going to fight until they lay me down. And I'm fighting for justice and right. And long as I know I'm right, I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you. So I want you to know where I'm at, and I want you, you used to call me up with all your garbage and talk on the telephone. I want you to still know that you don't scare me. I'm not afraid of you, but I have seen young people get killed, and then it would go down. So I remember the police killed a young man called Joe Anthony McGee. Joe Anthony McGee was a young man in a sub shop talking to a young lady, doing nothing. But they was in a part of Baltimore at that time where they really didn't want whites and blacks to get together. But young people, no matter what, they gonna get together. And they liked it each other, right? And so he embraced it, the young lady. He hugged her, and the police shot and killed him. And said he was pulling he thought he was pulling a gun out of his pocket when he was talking to her. And they got away with it too. They shot and killed him. I remember when, just like in Philadelphia that got bombed, well, right down on Eagle Street, we had a whole block severed, and they covered it up because they ran a young man in one house, and they said that he had drugs. Well, a young man ran in the house. The people came out. He told the people, please get out. He didn't want them to get out. They dropped a bomb and blew up everything in that whole block. Just severed that whole block. So see, I have seen them with their brutality over and over and over again. And my thing is, now young people are at the point where they just won't take it no more. They're just saying, it takes a lot when I talk to young people and I see them with a weapon. Because I let them know that I understand your hurt. I feel your pain. I know how you feel. But you understand this. You're only one person And there's many of them. Many of them. You know. So now, this man done come here with his garbage talking about the BGF is here. Is he? It is comical to me that he could come up. That's the best he could come up with. Do you know how old the average BGF is? The average BGF is at least 60-some years old. They are Black Panthers. So the average one of them, the average BGF is an old person. They either, and the ones that's going on, or the ones that have see that we're going to fight you another way. But that's his lie that he want to put out. That's his lie. When I talk to the young children and young people who want to identify themselves as BGF, I say to them, baby, you don't really know the meaning and what it is. We never robbed nobody. We never killed nobody. You know, we never did. Our thing was to give our people respect for each other, demand respect from everybody else, treat everybody else with respect, and have an education that we would be able to take care of our own self and govern our community. Those are the laws of the BGF. Those are the laws of the Black Panther Party. Where did BGF come about? BGF came about because Black Panthers were getting killed down, shot down like dogs. Like dogs. My father knew I was a Panther. Other people knew I was a Panther. So what did he do? He sent me on the Eastern Shore, which didn't do no good because that's where I really go. That's where a lot of stuff, But he pulled me back from there. And he said to me, look, your mother, you realize, see all these children here? They are yours. Well, my thing was, and still is, I'm fighting for a future for my children. And he said to me, you have got to understand that you got to tone it down. And what he meant by toning it down was you don't have to back up, you just have to be able to come in. Hey, that's my oldest boy. That's my oldest son, Harvey. Hi, Harvey. Come on by and get a chair.
Pardon me.
We're doing an interview. He used to that. They used to that. Yeah. But those are the things that I try to instill in young people today. See, because to say that you're in a gang or you're a gang member, and people will say, well, they not in the gang for protection. No, stand up for what you believe in, but you don't have to, you cannot find a person that tell you that really, truly a Black Panther ever took anything. We would go to the merchants and we would say, look, we got a breakfast program. We got a lunch program. And if you don't support this program, you ain't going to do business in our community. Now, we have done that. We've done that, just like everybody else do. Everybody else say, if you don't do this, then we ain't going to do that. So that's the way we would go to. We would go to the merchants in our community and say, you live in this community. And you make your money off the people in this community. So you have to give back. Now, then, even the people used to write numbers. That I don't know whether y'all know about the old number writers before they had the lottery. We had people used to go around with pen and paper, and they would write numbers, and if that number came out, see, you would hit, just like you do the lottery. We would tell them the same thing. Now, no drugs was in our community. We didn't allow that. The drug dealers try to come in our community. Oh, no, you can't do that. You could not buy drugs when the Black Panther Party was in post at Lexington, Murphy Homes, McCullough. Down here, you could not buy drugs in any of these developments. There were no drugs. We didn't allow it. Our thing was to educate our children. That's why we started schools after school. To educate our children on pride and who you are and what you should take pride in yourself and in your family, in your people, and educate them what their people did, because nobody had anything up saying, well, your ancestors developed the mop or the iron or any of these things. See, nobody did that. That was our job, and we did that. Even toilet paper, we would tell them, nobody would have toilet paper if it wasn't for us. Those were things that we taught our children. And so we were doing it too good. I have a brother that's still, not a biological brother, but one of my comrades and brother, Eddie Conway, who's still in prison today on a lie and has done over 40 some years on a lie, because he was the head of the Black Panther Party. And each time he comes up, at first they kept him for years, didn't really even give him a clear charge of what his charges was, a statement of his charges. Then they finally said that they had proof that he had killed a policeman. What was their proof? The proof was, first they said they put somebody in the cell with him and he told them that he killed the policeman. Then the next time they said, well, okay, he was identified by the gunshot, lights from the gunshot, that the person, that one of the people he was shooting at, seeing him, because when the gunshot, now if somebody's shooting at you, you ain't looking at no light from the gun, but that's, we know Eddie is innocent, and it's an ongoing battle and fight. So, we could be angry about a lot of things, but I said to them, no. Anger consumes you too much. Takes too much of your time. Takes too much of your time. Consumes your whole body. I know that. I'm a product of that. Once you allow that anger to go, then you can see clearly what you have to do. We're a whole community, a whole world. This is a whole world. The whole world, we need to embrace all injustice all over the world of all people. And that's what I say to, young people now. You don't have no enemy over there, when I used to say Vietnam, but over there in Lebanon, wherever they're at now. That's not your enemy. Your enemy is here. Your enemy is here. And one of my bishops said, stop saying that because they say you're a terrorist. I said, I have to say the truth. They can say anything about me, but I have to say the truth. You don't need to join no armed forces to fight nobody over there, to oppress somebody else. Because you hear only the rich benefits out of this war. Only rich people, not us. And we don't want to benefit. I don't want to benefit. I don't want it that I allow, my child or me to go hurt somebody else. That's wrong. The fact that we dropping bombs and killing families. America's going to pay for a lot of stuff that they have done. I'm never going to say we. When people talk to me about race, I say, I'm a chosen race. I'm made up of every race there is in the world. Every race in the world is in me. So, but America have to pay. America have to pay. And more you can see it falling. And you can see the weakening. There's no, we can talk about how we're going to do the economy, how we're going to say, as long as we're doing the things we do, we're never going to be able to save. We're never going to be able to change the economy. I'm a voter. I'm going to vote for Obama because right now he's the best deal between him and Mitt Romney. But I'm not disillusioned. I ain't hear him say nothing about the Pope. All he talk about is rich people, middle class. Well, What about people like me? You know, Mitt Romney already said I need to go somewhere and kick the bucket. So if if Obama and then he said we're gonna rise to, you know, and I said wonder did he understand what he said and where he got his line from? I think it was Reagan said that. You know, pull up the rich and then the wealth will trickle down and everybody right. Well, ain't we? It ain't trickled down yet, and it ain't gonna trickle down. But young people of all races, all incomes, is coming together. It's coming together, and they're not gonna allow what have happened happen. So this country, we in a boiling pot. We in a pot that's and it's boiling, it's boiling, and it's boiling. And I the reason they get more police and everything else because they're trying to protect their wealth, which is not going to do them any good. It's not going to do them any good. No matter how many guns, no how many weapons or what they have, they will not win. They will not win because the people in this country will rise up and act and make a change. Just like they doing all over this world. All over the continent, you see people standing up saying we don't have jobs, we don't have food, we don't have our basic human needs, so we're not going to take it. They may think they can appease people with a little bit of this and little, but truthfully, we got more homeless people in America than we ever had. We got more people incarcerated than we ever had. And so why do you think that you're going to get away with you know, I read the Bible and then I ask for clarity. And more I see what's happening to this country. Young people themselves are going to rise up. They're going to rise up and they're going to make a change. They're going to make a change, and all the guns and everything else they have will not, you know, you can talk about killing everybody, but you won't. You won't. Now, I may not be here when the Holy Creator has blessed me to see a lot of things I thought I would never see. I really, really done seen it. And I consider myself blessed in every way. But believe me,